Here you go guys, and welcome in another video. Today we're gonna talk about two interesting topics, or camera function, I mean the mode dial and the shooting mode dial. These two functions are very important because the first one allows how camera work and the second one is related as many pictures camera can take. So let's dive into the topic. When I started with the photography, the dial was a mystery, and now it's still a mystery. Okay, I'm joking, of course. This dial permits to select how cameras work. Usually, there are at least 5 options. P program, M manual, S shutter priority, A aperture priority, auto. You don't have to do anything, only shoot. Actually, there are other options according to the camera, and you can also find this option as macro, no flash, video, scene, slow motion and custom settings. So managing to list all the options is impossible, and I prefer to talk about only the first 5 ones. I start with the last only because it's the simplest to use it. Basically the camera will do almost everything for you, and you have only to press the shutter button, leaving to the camera the hard work to calculate the right shutter time and every other aspect of the camera. In case your camera has a built-in speed light, will be used if there isn't much environmental light. In my opinion, this mode is the worst if you want to learn how digital cameras work, so please don't use it. In program mode, the camera selects and sets both the shutter speed and the aperture for any given brightness of light. The camera has been programmed to set a specific combination of shutter speed and aperture. In low light, for example, the camera might set 1 to 30 of a second and f4. In bright light, it might set 1 to 500 of a second and f11. At the first sight, this appears similar to the auto setting. However, there are differences. Unlike auto mode, program mode lets you set a range of different camera functions, including ISO value, white balance, color space, focus mode, metering mode, exposure compensation, and flash control. Auto mode is a point and shoot mode. Okay guys, this is the option for expert people, for the best photographers, for gurus photography. And also this time, I'm joking. But a question comes up to my mind. Why do you want to use this function when there are the shutter and aperture priority modes? Basically because if you can set the two main aspects of a photo, aperture and shutter time, for achieving your goals. Furthermore, auto exposure metering can be fooled when a fast-moving subject travels from one background to another. Fixing the shutter speed and aperture gives you a constant exposure. Of course, you cannot select any shutter speed and any aperture. The two must work together to provide the correct exposure. You also need to use manual mode when using Studio Flash, so that you can set a shutter speed to synchronize with the flash. The exposure is controlled by the aperture. Manual mode applies only to exposure. Autofocus is still active if the lens is set to AF. When using manual mode, you can either choose to leave the ISO set to auto, where the camera looks after it, or choose the value yourself. The disadvantage of auto in manual mode is that if the camera gets the exposure wrong, then you have to know the default way to correcting it, as exposure compensation is not available to you. In this mode, you might change only the shutter speed, whereas the camera will change the aperture for the right exposition. ISO value is always available, so in case your image is a little dark, you can raise the ISO value, or better, leave it as ISO auto. Shutter priority is the ideal mode for action photography and wildlife photography as well. You can choose a speed which will freeze the movement of the subject, giving a crisp, sharp image. Shutter priority is also a good mode to use when and holding the camera with a telephoto lens fitted, as a long focal length magnifies camera shake and subject movement. Shutter priority mode means you can select a suitable fast shutter speed to avoid blur from camera shake. There will also be times when you want to set a slow shutter speed to provide blur for creative effects. The slowest default shutter speed you can set is 30 seconds. For slower shutter speeds, you need to use bulb mode. This shooting mode primarily allows you to control the aperture setting, whilst the camera looks after the shutter speed, like in the shutter priority mode. You can still change the ISO value according to your needs. Aperture priority is good for portrait and landscape pictures. There will be times when the aperture used for an image is more important than the shutter speed. When shooting landscape, for example, you will often want everything from the foreground to the horizon to appear as sharp as possible. These require a small lens aperture, such as f16 or f22, to give a wide depth of field. At other times, you might want a narrow depth of field, so the subject stands out sharply against an autofocus background. That's why the best shooting mode for these effects is aperture priority, shown as AV for aperture value on the shooting mode dial. By using this mode, you can concentrate on the aperture setting for your subject, whilst leaving the camera to set a suitable shutter speed that takes your aperture into account, whilst ensuring that the shutter speed is fast enough to avoid the effects of the camera shake. For nature photography, this is my favorite shooting mode because it permits me to separate better the subject from the background according to the maximum aperture allowed by the lens used. How many of you are impressed about the shooting bursts? There are cameras that are capable to shoot up to 30 fps, 30 raw files in a second. Unbelievable. Do you need such a power? Okay, all that power can be useful for many of us. For myself, as a wildlife photographer, it's vital having such a speed. That way, I can record many different instants of a movement, like a bird in flight, and to choose the best picture saved. Many cameras have a specific dial or a specific option to enable this feature. For instance, in the Sony A9, there's this dial where you can set which kind of shooting mode to use. Basically, you can choose among these options: single shot, burst shooting, where you can choose among high, medium and low speed, auto shoots, bracketing. Speaking about the single shoot, I would say that it's really simple. You press the shutter button and the camera shoots a picture. Okay, every time you press the shutter button, your camera will take a picture, simple and easy, in the burst shooting mode. After choosing the speed among the high, medium and low, your camera will take 5, 10 or 20 images per second, according to how much light there is in your scene. For the auto shoot option, you can set a delay before shooting, so for instance, you can set 2 seconds delayed, and when you press the shutter button, your camera will shoot after 2 seconds. This kind of shoot is useful for shooting yourself, or better, for avoiding to shake your camera and or the tripod. In nature photography, I use that method for landscape or with a static subject, like for instance a bird in a perch. Of course, if you use longer times, you need to use a tripod, even though I use a tripod also with only 2 seconds delay. And the last one, the bracketing, is a way to shoot picture using different settings, usually the exposition. To be honest, in nature photography, I don't use it, mostly in burst mode. Can you imagine using bracketing when you are shooting at 20 fps? I'm not sure of the result, but it's not for me. Anyway, remember always to read the camera user menu and remember to subscribe my channel. As always, it's free and giving me a like will make me happy. If you have some question or request, please write them in the comment section below. Thanks for watching, see you in the next video. Bye bye.